QuakeSafe Technologies Company, Limited. Brand, Safetyinside, is the industry leader in China and a worldwide leading provider of seismic isolation and shock absorption solutions. In order to ensure the construction quality of isolation building and to confirm final earthquake isolation effect, this video is made to guide the construction operation of the workers in the construction site. Product introduction. The seismic isolator is made of thin steel plate and thin rubber sheet superimposed by vulcanization. It can provide sufficient vertical bearing capacity, but also has great horizontal deformation capacity. Under normal circumstances, its service life can meet or even exceed the requirements of design and specification for the service life of isolated buildings. The main construction process. Material preparation. Positioning plate, anchor bar sleeve assembly, isolator. The lower pier, column, reinforcement binding. Installation of positioning plate and lower connecting components. Elevation. The leveling bars and the lower pier bars are firmly fixed by lacing wire. The distance between the top of the bar and the bottom of the locating plate is the thickness of the protective layer of the bar. When bundling the steel bars of the lower piers, stagger the positions of the connectors as much as possible. The positioning plate should pop out of the cross-center line. In general, the positioning plate should be located in the middle of the lower support pier. The top surface of the sleeve is tightly attached to the positioning plate. Connectors should be vertical. Select 2 points on the upper and lower parts of the connector and bind the main rib of the support pier by lacing wire. The lower pier, column, formwork support. Concrete placement. Before concrete placement, relevant units and personnel should be organized to carry out concealed acceptance of positioning embedded parts. Only after passing the test can concrete be poured. Remove the positioning plate. The top surface of the lower support pier, column, is leveled. After concrete pouring is finished, screw out the bolts before setting out. Remove the locating plate and re-screw the bolt into the sleeve. The receiving surface of raw pulp is flattened and calendared. Then the top surface of the lower pier column was re-measured and recorded. The finished concrete pouring surface should be slightly higher than the top surface of the sleeve by 2 mm to 3 mm. Isolator installation and upper embedded component installation. When the concrete strength reaches 75% of the design strength, the isolator can be installed. Before installation, check the flatness of the top surface of the lower pier with a level and polish it partially. Check the levelness, flatness, and elevation of the top surface of the lower pier, and start the isolator installation after no error. Check all isolator models one by one during installation. After the installation, check the levelness and elevation of the top surface of the isolator, and install the embedded components. After the installation of isolator is completed, relevant units and personnel should be organized to carry out item-by-item acceptance, and only after passing the test can they enter the next process. The construction of the upper pier and isolation layer beam and plate. After the installation of the isolator and the installation of the upper embedded components, the construction stage of the superstructure of the isolation building is entered. The construction of the superstructure of the isolation building is the same as that of the conventional building. Seismic isolation structural measures. Qualified seismic isolation structural measures are an important guarantee for the performance of the isolator. Without or with unqualified seismic isolation structural measures will affect the use of seismic isolation buildings and even structural safety. The reasonable setting of seismic isolation structural measures is as important as the installation of seismic isolator. Isolation joint. Isolation joints are divided into vertical isolation joints and horizontal isolation joints. Joint width and joint height shall meet the design and specification requirements. Key control, outdoor steps, ramps, platforms, elevator shafts, and isolation joints with high and low difference positions. Other structural measures. Flexible connection. flexible connection or other effective measures should be adopted for piping and wiring through isolation layer and isolation joint to adapt to the horizontal displacement of isolation layer under earthquake action. To ensure that the pipelines and their flexible connections will not be damaged in the event of an earthquake, flexible connections should be reserved for adequate extension length. Lightning protection ground. The lightning protection cable passing through the isolator should be flexibly connected and reserved for sufficient extension length. Isolator fire prevention measures. When the isolation story is set in the using space with fire resistance requirements, the isolator and other components should take corresponding fire prevention measures according to the fire resistance grade of the use space. Special Subdivision Project Acceptance. After the installation of isolator, isolation structural measures, isolation joint, flexible connection, and other items are accepted. The Chief Supervision Engineer shall organize the project leader and technical leader of the construction unit to carry out special acceptance of the isolation sub-branch project. The above is all vibration safety technology isolator installation guidance animation. Thank you for watching.